Welcome to our final golf course design lecture. I hope you've learned a little bit in the time we've spent together, and I'm hopefully going to sum up some things and give you one of your last assignments before the final exam. We're going to talk about shot value. And shot value is sometimes a little bit of an abstract concept, but it's something that I'm hopefully with this lecture going to help you tie down and also give you a way to quantify that, which is a shot value chart, and something that when you go to a new golf course, it's a useful tool to look at what the designer was thinking in the planning of the order of the holes. And some golf course architect aficionados have talked to this like a symphony, or like music, like a crescendo, like if the notes get higher or deeper as the holes get more difficult, bum 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 bum. So as it goes, and the picture at the end should get us to that point. But shot value here, one of Cornish's definitions is whether a hazard is fair under certain circumstances. And one of the easy ways to think about it is if you have a very long, difficult par 4, you can't have a small green with deep bunkers. But if it's a short par 4, you can have a small green with deep bunkers because it should be easier for most golfers. So trying to balance length to difficulty is something that we hopefully have done in our experiment where we designed the golf course. Shot value will vary from golfer to golfer. Some golfers will like shorter holes with more difficulty. I thrive on that type of golf course. Some golfers that hit it a long way but have less control will like a more Talamore type long with obstacles that actually help the long hitter bounce back into the fairway. Basically, a freeway hole or a simple hole without much thought is going to not have much shot value. Or if it rewards a poor shot like the mounds at Talamore or some of the Reese Jones golf courses, that would be considered poor shot value. Accomplished architects mix up their shot value. They variance hard tee shots with easy tee shots. One of the things Pete Dye does that we talked about is he makes a shot go right to left, and then a shot go left to right, and then a shot go right to left. So he balances, he avoids uniformity in length, avoid uniformity in bunker placement, just giving the golfer a different look on every hole. And like I have said before, it takes a very good golf course for me to choose to play it over the Elks Club, because the Elks Club does this. Donald Ross and even John LaFoy's changes really kept this golf course model for that golf course. So a simple functional architect is not going to be as skilled at creating an experience. He'll create 18 holes with easily reachable objectives and few problems. Not much shot value, pretty easy. Probably a golf course would be considered too easy for the scratch or very good player. Good players are going to more want to challenge themselves on more difficult golf courses. However, we do need these golf courses, a functional course for beginners and people that are just learning the game, and to fuel the economy of the game. And I'm going to talk about that here at the end. One of the catch-22s of our sport is everybody wants to be the superintendent at Augusta or a great big club. What about the beginners' places? How do we foster growth in the sport? So here is a shot value chart. This is Stanley Thompson here, who trained Robert Trent Jones, and he came up with this. One-shot holes would be a 100-yard hole would be a mashie, an iron, a cleek, a wooden cleek. So he used the old names, a brassy, a driver. So this idea here was taken and moved forward, and I'm going to want you to look at the next slide, which is Michael Hertziger, who has done many talks at the Carolinas. This is a few years back when he was giving a talk at the Carolinas, but he took and modified that to more modern clubs. So we see a par 3 here, zone. So 100-yard par 3, pitching wedge, 9 iron, 7 iron, 150, 3 iron, 200. So those holes. So we would look, and we would look over here. So the par 3 holes, and first the holes are listed in order. So this would be the tempo. This was the music I was talking about. Bump, 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 bump. So how it builds to some harder holes at the end. And you see there's a range where there aren't any holes. So these holes are places where a hole would be too short to be a too long to be a par 3, but too short to be a par 4. And then the par 5s generally ramp up smoothly for Hertzinger. So this is a way of looking, and if you see the shot value chart do something like that and then bump up like that, you'll find the holes aren't very different. Or a lot of modern golf courses, the par 3s are all 200 yards. And remember, there's a shot value chart for all the tees on the golf course. So if you're a golf course superintendent at a golf course, you probably should have a feeling for all the different tees. And I like to say that the golf course architect sets the parameters, but the guy that puts the tees out in the morning is the one that really decides this. And a lot of modern golf courses can play anywhere from 100 to 200 yards by the length of tees. So if he puts the white tees always at 160, then the guys that go out to play the white tees are not going to have much choice. So you want your person that's doing setup to be educated in golf and to be able to think and understand this shot value chart. So the assignment is going to be for you to take a golf course you like and then maybe a golf course you don't like and do a shot value chart like this for both. And guys in the past have done a good job of this. You can do it on the computer. You can do it by hand. I've got a handout that has, you could just do it right on the handout. So there's a bunch of different ways to do it. I want to forewarn the seniors and even the freshmen, anybody in the program, you will have to do this for at least one set of tees for your internship golf course as a way to think about the shot value. It doesn't actually give you the shot values, but you would think that this par 3, the shorter par 3 down here, would be much more difficult green than this par 3, and so on. So that's something to think about and a good way to organize your thoughts. So the best virtuoso architects are going to design so that the golfer can identify each required shot, and after a bit of examination and thought, using deception and misdirection, the stratagem that we talked about in the very first lecture, the heroic and the strategic holes, and the obvious shot might not be the preferred way to go. And that's very evident from the old course and some of the other architects that we've talked about as we've moved through the course along the timeline. And Dr. Alistair McKenzie, who we had an entire lecture on, I think was very good at designing for all levels of golfer. And this was probably because he never was a better golfer than an 18 handicap. So he played the game like your average golfer and created a fun place for that. And I think some modern architects, particularly the pros, the Jack Nicklauses and the Arnold Palmers, have tended to leave this group behind, and we need to bring these people back in because they're the ones that fuel our profession. So most architects dictate how a hole must be played. Very simple. Reese Jones has got to hit it here, versus a strategic hole where you could be played in many different ways from many different angles, and you might need to play a hole from the left to right on one day when the pin's on the right, and from the right to left when the pin's on the left. So very different setups and much things where a golf course plays very different from day to day. More than one angle of attack, so wider fairway. So by modern golf, restrictions and real estate restrictions have made it where very few real estate developments have strategic golf holes. So those architects are not going to be considered the best by the people that study golf course architecture. Robert Trent Jones. So there's a picture of Robert. I'm just going to reiterate some of the things he said. A problem for all classes of golfers. So he can think about it and maybe execute and maybe not. Something interesting to look at, something to do for all golfers that they can accomplish. So these heroic holes, but doable, are part of Robert Trent Jones' repertoire, and I think it's very interesting to look at Robert Trent Jones and Rees Jones golf courses and compare and contrast them to see how they're different, even though they use many of the same elements. And then James Braid, who we talked about, one of the triumphant, who never came to the U.S., but did some very simple things early that have stood the test of time for creating great strategy. He used large greens for long shots, small greens for wedge shots, and a knob or a little bump in the middle of a green, or particularly in the middle of a big green, divides the green up and makes it so you really have to be precise with your approach shot, or else you're going to three-putt if you're on the other side of that knob from the hole, or you're going to have to make a really excellent recovery shot. So that's something that is not frightening for the beginning golfer. They're going to three-putt anyway, but it's not that big a deal. They might enjoy making one of those big long putts, but it's going to punish the scratch golfer if he's just not fine-tuned with his iron approach shots. And Jeffrey Cornish, the author of the original book that I studied this from, listed some architects, and I think this is a pretty good list, and if you get a chance, you should search out these golf courses in the areas you visit on your internship, or if you can do an internship at one of these, I highly recommend it. James Braid, Willie Park Jr., Colt, Crump, McDonald, McKenzie, Ross, Stanley Thompson, A.W. Tillinghouse, The Terror, Robert Trent Jones Sr., Pete Dye, and that was it for those guys. And you can add more to your list if you want. You could probably add Mike Strantz if you wanted. But you might not add this guy. Michael Hertzen, Dr. Hertzen, is attempting to do some more environmental stuff and also to do affordable golf. And a few years ago we had a panel, and it consisted of Tom Fazio and people from Pinehurst and people from the Dunes Club, so all these great big clubs in the Carolinas, talking about affordable golf, rounds less than $20. The First Tee program, nonprofit for kids, building golf courses with used irrigation. And I had a question for these gentlemen because they were all excited about it. I said, how many of you would take that job? Will that job pay enough to survive? And they're not the ones that are going to take those jobs. You are. So you, fresh out of school, are going to be the ones that have an opportunity to take a job as a superintendent in an affordable golf course. And I'm not saying don't take that job, but you're going to have a small crew, probably a less educated, less skilled crew, and then they want you to use irrigation to boot. So can you make the jump from these courses to the big country clubs? And the panel seemed to think you could. I think that's a difficulty. It's very hard to go from what's considered a medium resort course or a daily play course to a private club. Most of the private club superintendents come from private club assistants. So you need to think about where you want to be as you choose your internship. So thanks for listening, putting up with my opinions. I hope you've fabricated some of your own, and I hope you have some better ideas on where to go out and how to look at golf courses. Thanks again.